I was loading my rescue snowmobile onto the trailer when I first heard the shrill voice cutting through the crisp mountain air like a chainsaw through pine. "Excuse me, excuse me. What do you think you are doing?" I turned around to see a woman in her mid-40s storming down my driveway, clutching a tablet to her chest like a shield. She wore a puffy vest over a turtleneck despite it being early October in Whitefish, Montana. And her blonde hair was cut in that aggressive bob that seemed to be standard issue for a certain type of person. I had lived in the Pine Ridge subdivision for 3 years and had successfully avoided most HOA drama, but I recognized her immediately from the monthly newsletters that clogged my mailbox. "Brenda Morrison, HOA president. Loading my snowmobile," I said, keeping my voice even. "My name is Logan Mitchell, and I have learned over my 32 years that staying calm tends to diffuse most situations. Just getting ready for the season." "That," she said, pointing at my sled with a perfectly manicured nail painted an aggressive shade of red, "is in direct violation of Pine Ridge Community Association rules, Section 12, subsection B." I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked toward her, genuinely confused. "What violation?" "Recreational vehicles must be stored in enclosed garages and are not to be visible from the street at any time, and parking a trailer in your driveway. Absolutely forbidden. This is a community that prides itself on maintaining property values and aesthetic standards." I glanced back at my snowmobile, a specially equipped Ski-Doo Summit X with search and rescue modifications, sitting on my utility trailer in my own driveway. "Brenda, I am literally just loading it. I will be gone in 20 minutes. The rules do not make exceptions for temporary situations. You will remove that eyesore immediately or face fines." She tapped something on her tablet with aggressive little jabs. "I am heading up to the training facility. This is part of my volunteer work with Flathead County Search and Rescue. I do this every week." Her eyes narrowed. "I do not care if you are training for the Olympics. Rules are rules, and everyone in Pine Ridge must follow them equally. That is what makes a community function." Something in her tone triggered a memory. Last month, her son had parked a lifted pickup truck in front of his house for an entire weekend while he detailed it. I had not said anything because, honestly, who cares? But apparently, Brenda had a selective memory about which rules applied to whom. "Your son had his truck sitting out front for 2 days last month," I said, immediately regretting engaging with her logic, her face flushed. "That was different. He was maintaining his vehicle, which is specifically allowed under Section 15. What you are doing is storing a recreational toy that no one in this neighborhood wants to see. It is not a toy. It is rescue equipment. It looks like a toy to me. Now, I am giving you 15 minutes to get that monstrosity out of sight, or I am issuing a citation. And frankly, I do not think someone with your lifestyle choices should even own something like that in a respectable neighborhood." My lifestyle choices. I was a wildlife biologist for the Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife and Parks, and I volunteered with search and rescue on weekends and emergencies. I paid my HOA dues on time, kept my lawn maintained, and generally minded my own business. But apparently, that was not good enough. "Brenda, be reasonable. I am leaving right now. The snowmobile will not be here in 20 minutes. And when you come back, where will you store it then? I have driven past your house, Logan. I know your garage is full of equipment. That thing is going to sit in your driveway or on the side of your house, and that is unacceptable." She was not entirely wrong. My garage was indeed full of work equipment, camping gear, and yes, some of my rescue stuff. But the snowmobile lived in a storage unit most of the year, only coming out when I needed to train or when we had an actual rescue mission. It goes back into storage after training, I said. Like always, I want it in writing. And I want to inspect your property to ensure you are not violating any other covenants. She pulled up something on her tablet. In fact, looking at your file, I see you were cited last year for having your grass a quarter-inch too long in August. That citation was overturned because I was on a 3-day rescue mission looking for a missing hiker. Remember, it was in the news. Circumstances do not override the rules. Perhaps you should hire a lawn service if your hobbies prevent you from maintaining your property. My hobbies. She called volunteer search and rescue, where I had helped find 12 missing people in the past 2 years, a hobby. I felt my jaw tighten, but I forced myself to breathe. Getting into a shouting match with Brenda would only make things worse. I need to go, I said. I am already late for training. This conversation is not over, she called as I walked back to my truck. I am calling an emergency board meeting about your vehicle situation. You will be hearing from us. I climbed into my truck and pulled out of the subdivision, watching Brenda in my rearview mirror as she stood in the middle of my driveway, typing furiously on her tablet. This was going to be a problem. I could feel it. The training facility was 40 minutes north, up in the mountains where early snow had already started accumulating at the higher elevations. My phone rang as I drove and I answered on Bluetooth. Logan, it is Marcus. Where are you? Marcus Chen was the coordinator for our SAR unit, a former paramedic who had been doing this for 15 years. On my way. Had a situation at home. What kind of situation? HOA president ambushed me while I was loading the sled. Apparently, having rescue equipment violates neighborhood aesthetics. Marcus let out a long sigh. Let me guess. Brenda Morrison. You know her, unfortunately. She tried to block the county from installing an emergency siren near her street last year, said it would disturb the peace. Took 3 meetings and a direct order from the county commissioners to get it done. Sounds about right. Look, if she gives you real trouble, let me know. The county has legal precedent for emergency personnel and volunteers needing to store equipment. We have dealt with this before. That made me feel slightly better, but I knew Brenda was not going to let this go easily. She had that look in her eyes, the one that said she had found a cause to champion, and nothing was going to stop her from being right. Training went well. We practiced navigation, avalanche protocols, and cold water rescue techniques. By the time I finished and loaded everything back up, it was nearly dark. I stopped for dinner at a diner in Columbia Falls, putting off the inevitable return home. My phone buzzed while I was eating a burger. An email from the Pine Ridge Community Association. That was fast. Dear Mr. Mitchell, this letter serves as formal notice that you are in violation of Pine Ridge Community Association covenants, specifically Article Roman 12, Section B, regarding visible recreational vehicles, and Article Roman 7, Section D, regarding trailer parking. You have 72 hours to cure these violations or face fines of $100 per day. Additionally, the board has scheduled a hearing for October 18th at 7 p.m. to discuss your ongoing storage situation and ensure future compliance. Failure to attend this hearing may result in additional penalties. Sincerely, Brenda Morrison, President, Pine Ridge Community Association Board. October 18th was 5 days away. I had not even been home yet, and she had already escalated this to a formal hearing. The snowmobile was going back into storage tomorrow morning, so her 72-hour deadline was meaningless, but the hearing worried me. Brenda clearly had it out for me, and HOA boards had surprising amounts of power when they wanted to make someone's life difficult. I called my neighbor, an older guy named Robert who had lived in Pine Ridge since the subdivision was built 12 years ago. He answered on the third ring. "Logan, how are you? Been better. Question for you. How bad can Brenda actually make this HOA thing?" Robert laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Pretty bad if she wants to. 2 years ago, she went after the Hendersons because their Christmas lights stayed up until January 10th. They ended up with $4,000 in fines before they finally took her to mediation. Board sided with her on most of it. You are kidding." I wish I was. Brenda sees herself as the guardian of property values. In her mind, she is protecting everyone's investment. In reality, she just likes having power over people. Can she actually force me to get rid of my snowmobile? If the covenants say so, yes. But you said it is for search and rescue, right? That might be different. You should probably talk to a lawyer. A lawyer. For storing my rescue sled. This was getting absurd. I drove home around 9, deliberately parking my truck and trailer in the garage with the door closed. The snowmobile was tucked away where no one could see it from the street. I half expected to find a citation taped to my front door, but there was nothing. Small mercies. The next morning, I dropped the snowmobile at the storage unit before work. Problem solved, at least temporarily. But I knew the hearing was still coming, and Brenda was not going to be satisfied with me simply complying. She wanted to make a point. Work kept me busy for the next few days. We had reports of a grizzly bear getting into trash cans near Kalispell, and I spent 2 days tracking it and coordinating with local residents about proper food storage. It was the kind of work I loved, being outside, solving problems, helping wildlife and people coexist. October 18th arrived too quickly. The hearing was at Brenda's house, which seemed like a conflict of interest, but apparently that was where board meetings always happened. I showed up at 7 sharp, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt, trying to look respectful without looking like I was trying too hard. Brenda answered the door with a tight smile. "Logan, punctual, good, come in." Her house was exactly what I expected. Everything was white and gray and perfectly arranged, like a furniture store display. 5 other people sat around a large dining room table, all of them older than me, all of them looking vaguely uncomfortable. I recognized a few faces from around the neighborhood, but had never actually spoken to most of them. "Everyone, this is Logan Mitchell, the resident we are here to discuss," Brenda said, gesturing to an empty chair at the end of the table like I was on trial. "Logan, you know why you are here." "I do, but I am not sure why a hearing is necessary. The snowmobile is in storage. I moved it the next day." "This is not just about the immediate violation," Brenda said, pulling out a thick folder. "This is about a pattern of behavior that shows disregard for community standards." A pattern. I had gotten 1 citation in 3 years, and it had been overturned. "What pattern?" I asked. She opened the folder. "Last August, overgrown lawn. September of last year, you left your garbage cans visible from the street until Tuesday afternoon instead of bringing them in Monday night. This March, you parked your work truck in your driveway overnight on 3 separate occasions. And now this recreational vehicle situation. The lawn citation was overturned. The garbage thing was because I was at work. I am a state employee, Brenda. I do not have a 9-to-5 schedule. And the work truck is required for my job. I have to be able to respond to wildlife emergencies. None of which exempts you from following the rules everyone else follows," she said. "Other people have jobs and responsibilities too. They manage to comply." One of the other board members, a woman in her 60s named Patricia, spoke up. "Brenda, this seems excessive. The young man moved his snowmobile. What else do you want?" "I want assurance that it will not happen again," Brenda said. And I want to discuss whether someone whose job requires this level of equipment storage is appropriate for a community like Pine Ridge. The room went quiet. Was she seriously suggesting I should not be allowed to live here because of my job? That is not legal, I said. You cannot discriminate based on occupation. I am not discriminating. I am pointing out that your lifestyle may not be compatible with our community standards. Perhaps a more rural setting would better suit your needs. I own my house. I have paid every bill on time. I maintain my property. You are targeting me because you do not like what I do. Brenda's face flushed. I am targeting you because you think the rules do not apply to you. You think because you play hero on the weekends, you deserve special treatment. Play hero. The words hit me like a slap. Last winter, I had spent 16 hours in sub-zero temperatures searching for a 10-year-old girl who had wandered away from a family skiing trip. We found her hypothermic but alive. The year before, I had rappelled down a cliff face to reach an injured climber. But sure, I was playing hero. I volunteer with search and rescue, I said, keeping my voice level. It is not playing. People's lives depend on it. And that is very noble, Brenda said in a tone that made it clear she thought it was anything but. However, your noble pursuits do not override your obligations to this community. So here is what is going to happen. You are going to sign an agreement stating that no recreational vehicles, work trucks, or any other non-standard vehicles will be visible from the street at any time. You will keep your garage organized to accommodate all equipment, and you will face a $1,000 fine for your recent violations. $1,000 for having a trailer in my driveway for 20 minutes, for willful disregard of community standards, yes. Another board member, a man named Carl, shifted uncomfortably. Brenda, that seems steep. Maybe we should just issue a warning. Carl, we have discussed this. If we do not enforce the rules consistently, they become meaningless. Logan needs to understand that he is not special. I never said I was special. I said I was loading equipment. You were displaying a recreational vehicle in clear violation of covenants. The why does not matter. I looked around the table at the other board members. Patricia looked sympathetic. Carl looked uncomfortable. The other three would not meet my eyes. They were all afraid of Brenda, I realized. She had probably bullied each of them at some point, and they had learned it was easier to just go along with her than fight back. I am not signing anything, I said. And I am definitely not paying a $1,000 fine for a violation I cured immediately. If you want to pursue this, we can go to mediation or court. Brenda's smile was ice cold. I was hoping you would be reasonable, but I see that is not possible. Very well. You will receive formal notice of fines and further action. This meeting is adjourned. I stood up. You know what, Brenda? I think you just like making people miserable. Everyone else in this neighborhood manages to be decent human beings, but you have to turn everything into a power trip. Get out of my house, she said. I left, my heart pounding. That had gone even worse than I expected. As I walked to my truck, Patricia caught up with me. Logan, wait. I turned. I am sorry, Patricia. I should not have lost my temper. No, you were right. She is on a power trip. She has been getting worse over the past year. We have tried to vote her out, but she controls the board meetings and the proxies. It is very difficult. So what do? Document everything. Get a lawyer if you need to, and honestly, fight back. Someone needs to stand up to her, or she will just keep getting worse. I thanked Patricia and drove home, my mind racing. This was escalating way beyond what it should have been. I needed help. The next morning, I called Marcus and explained the situation. He listened carefully, asking questions about the exact wording of the covenants and what Brenda had said. Okay, he said when I finished. Here is the thing. Montana has specific laws about emergency services and equipment storage. You are a registered volunteer with the county. Your snowmobile is registered as rescue equipment. Legally, the HOA cannot prevent you from storing necessary emergency equipment. Are you sure? Positive. We have dealt with this before. I am going to connect you with the county attorney who handles this stuff. Her name is Jennifer Walsh, and she specializes in emergency services law. She will send a letter to your HOA explaining that they cannot interfere with your rescue activities. Relief washed over me. That would be amazing. Give me a few hours. I will call you back. Marcus came through by early afternoon. Jennifer Walsh called me directly, got all the details, and by the end of the day, she had drafted a letter to the Pine Ridge Community Association. She emailed me a copy, and I read it with growing satisfaction. The letter explained that Montana Code, annotated section 733-4101, specifically protected volunteer emergency personnel from restrictions that would impede their ability to respond to emergencies. It cited case precedent where HOAs had tried to restrict ambulances, fire trucks, and emergency vehicles, and had lost. It pointed out that my snowmobile was registered with Flathead County as rescue equipment, which made it exempt from standard recreational vehicle restrictions. The letter concluded by noting that any fines levied against me for storing emergency equipment would be considered unlawful and could result in legal action against the HOA board members personally. Jennifer sent the letter via certified mail and email that evening. I felt like I could breathe again, but I should have known Brenda would not give up that easily. 2 days later, I came home from work to find a citation taped to my door. This time, it was for improper landscaping, claiming my front yard had weeds exceeding 2 inches in height. I walked around my yard carefully. There were a few small dandelions near the mailbox, maybe an inch tall at most. This was retaliation, pure and simple. I took photos, measuring each weed with a ruler to document that none exceeded 2 inches. Then I called Jennifer. "They are retaliating," she said immediately. "This is harassment. Start keeping a log of every interaction, every citation, everything. We might need it." Over the next 2 weeks, I received 4 more citations. My house number was supposedly not visible enough from the street, even though it had not changed in 3 years. My mailbox was deteriorating, even though I had replaced it 6 months ago. My front door wreath was non-conforming seasonal decoration, even though it was just a simple autumn wreath that half the neighborhood had. Each time, I documented everything with photos and timestamps. I also started asking my neighbors if they were getting similar citations. They were not. It was just me. Robert, my neighbor, came over one evening while I was measuring my mailbox to prove it met specifications. "She is going after you hard," he said. "No kidding. Look, I have been talking to some of the other neighbors. We are all pretty fed up with Brenda. She did this same thing to the Johnsons before they moved, cited them for everything under the sun until they just gave up and left. I am not leaving. Good, because we want to help." There is a provision in the bylaws that allows residents to call for a special election if we get signatures from 30% of homeowners. We have been quietly gathering them. We almost have enough. I looked at Robert in surprise. "You are organizing against Brenda." "Someone has to. She has made life miserable for too many people. Your situation just made everyone realize it could be any of us next. How many signatures do you have?" 23 out of the 30 we need. Do you think your search and rescue buddies who live in Pine Ridge would sign? I thought about it. I knew at least 3 other SAR volunteers lived in the subdivision. I can ask. By the end of the week, Robert had his 30 signatures. The special election was scheduled for November 10th. The entire board would be up for a vote, and anyone who wanted to run against the incumbents could submit their name. Brenda, predictably, lost her mind. She sent an email to every resident claiming that a small group of malcontents was trying to undermine the community. She listed all the improvements the board had made under her leadership: a new entrance sign, updated landscaping at the community park, successful collection of HOA dues. She made it sound like removing her would lead to chaos and declining property values, but she made a critical mistake. In her email, she specifically mentioned me by name, calling me a resident who believes his volunteer activities exempt him from rules everyone else follows, and suggesting that if people like me were allowed to do whatever we wanted, the neighborhood would become a storage yard for recreational toys and work equipment. Jennifer Walsh read the email and immediately called me. She just opened herself up to a defamation claim. She is publicly attacking you to deflect from her own problems. This is good for us. Good how? Because now we have a pattern of harassment documented. If this goes to court, which it might, we can show she has been targeting you specifically, retaliating against you for asserting your legal rights, and now she is attempting to damage your reputation in the community. I do not want this to go to court. I just want to live in my house and do my job. I know, but sometimes you have to fight back to get bullies to stop. Let me send her another letter. The second letter from Jennifer was more forceful. It outlined the harassment campaign, cited specific laws Brenda had broken, and warned that continued retaliation would result in a lawsuit not just against the HOA but against Brenda personally for harassment and defamation. For a few days, things were quiet. Too quiet. I should have known it was just the calm before the storm. On November 3rd, I got an emergency call from Marcus. A hiker had gone missing in Glacier National Park, last seen heading toward Avalanche Lake. It was already snowing hard, and temperatures were dropping fast. They needed every available volunteer. I rushed home, threw my gear together, and backed my truck up to my garage to load the snowmobile. It would be dark soon, and every minute counted. The missing hiker was a 62-year-old man with a heart condition. If we did not find him soon, he would not survive the night. I was strapping down the snowmobile when Brenda appeared at the end of my driveway. "What did I tell you about that thing?" she said. I did not have time for this. "Brenda, there is a missing person. I have to go." "You are in direct violation of the agreement. That snowmobile is not allowed to be visible." "I never signed any agreement, and this is an emergency. Get out of my way." She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. "More evidence. You are racking up quite a fine, Logan." Something inside me snapped. A man is dying on a mountain and you are worried about your stupid rules. I am worried about maintaining standards that protect all of us. Your emergencies are not my problem. I stared at her, genuinely shocked. How can you even say that? Because I have spent years building this community into something respectable, and I will not let people like you tear it down because you think you are special. My phone rang. "Marcus." "Logan, where are you? We need to move now." "On my way," I said. I turned to Brenda. "We will deal with this later. Right now, I have a job to do." I climbed into my truck and backed out of the driveway. Brenda had to jump aside and she screamed something about calling the police. I did not care. A man's life was on the line. The search took all night. We found the hiker at 2 in the morning, unconscious but alive, sheltered under a rock outcropping. He had fallen and injured his leg, could not walk out. My snowmobile was critical in reaching him quickly and getting him down to where the helicopter could land. The paramedics said if we had been an hour later, he probably would not have made it. I got home at 6 in the morning. exhausted and still cold to the bone despite layers of gear. The snowmobile was still on the trailer because I had not had time to unload it at the storage unit. I would deal with it after I slept. I woke up at noon to someone pounding on my door. Through the window, I saw a Flathead County Sheriff's deputy. My heart sank. Had Brenda actually called the police? I opened the door. The deputy, a guy in his 30s with a tired expression, nodded at me. "Logan Mitchell, that's me. I am Deputy Harris. I got a complaint about a vehicle blocking the sidewalk and threatening public safety. Can you tell me what is going on?" I explained the whole situation, from Brenda's campaign against my snowmobile to the rescue mission the night before. Deputy Harris listened, occasionally glancing at the snowmobile on the trailer. "So you are with County SAR?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Volunteer but registered." "And this sled is registered as rescue equipment, correct?" He walked over to the snowmobile and looked at the registration sticker, then pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, can you confirm registration for a snowmobile number?" He read off the registration. A moment later, the radio crackled. "Confirmed. Vehicle is registered to Flathead County Search and Rescue, assigned to volunteer Logan Mitchell." Deputy Harris walked back to me. "Okay, here is the situation. The woman who called, Brenda Morrison, claims you are violating HOA rules and that your vehicle is a public safety hazard. However, county vehicles and equipment used for emergency services are exempt from most local regulations, including HOA covenants. You are not breaking any laws." Relief flooded through me. "So I am good, legally, yes. However, I would suggest getting that snowmobile into storage soon just to avoid further complaints. Miss Morrison was quite insistent on the phone, and I would rather not have to come back out here. I am taking it to storage this afternoon." "Good enough." He paused. "For what it is worth, my brother-in-law is on SAR. I know the work you guys do. Thank you." After he left, I loaded up and drove to the storage unit, making sure to document the time and take photos showing the snowmobile was secured. Then I went home and slept for another 4 hours. When I woke up, I had an email from Brenda with the subject line, "Final warning. Mr. Mitchell, your flagrant disregard for community rules has reached an unacceptable level. Not only did you display your recreational vehicle in clear violation of covenants, but you also endangered a board member by recklessly backing your truck out of your driveway while she was conducting an inspection. This constitutes assault, and I have filed a police report. Furthermore, you are now being fined $2,500 for accumulated violations. Payment is due within 30 days, or we will place a lien on your property. The board has also voted to permanently ban all snowmobiles from the Pine Ridge subdivision, regardless of their stated purpose." Brenda Morrison, I read it twice, my anger building. She had filed a police report claiming I assaulted her. That was a lie. I had backed out slowly, and she had plenty of time to move. And how could they vote to ban my snowmobile when I had legal protection? I forwarded the email to Jennifer immediately. She called within 10 minutes. "This is beyond harassment now," she said. "She is filing false police reports and attempting to place an illegal lien on your property. We are filing a lawsuit today. Are you sure that is necessary?" "Logan, she is not going to stop. She is escalating. If we do not stop her now, this will only get worse. Plus, if she has filed a false police report, that is actually a crime. The prosecutor might want to get involved." The lawsuit was filed the next day. Jennifer moved fast, submitting a complaint that outlined everything: the harassment, the retaliation, the false police report, the attempted illegal fines, and the defamation. She requested an injunction preventing the HOA from levying any fines against me, and asked for damages for emotional distress and legal fees. The Pine Ridge Community Association was served with papers 2 days later. According to Robert, Brenda had a meltdown at the emergency board meeting she called. She insisted the HOA fight back, but several board members were getting nervous. Being personally sued was not something they had signed up for. The special election happened on November 10th as scheduled. Turnout was heavy, which was unusual for HOA elections. People cared this time because Brenda had made it clear what was at stake. I voted early, then went to work. I was tracking a wolf pack near Columbia Falls and did not get home until after 8. Robert was waiting on my porch. "We won," he said, grinning. "Brenda got voted out. The entire old board is gone. New board is mostly younger folks who just want to maintain the common areas and stop micromanaging everyone." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. That is amazing. It gets better. One of the first things the new board is going to do is review all outstanding citations and fines. They are planning to dismiss anything that seems excessive or retaliatory. What about the lawsuit? They want to settle. The new board president, a lawyer named Tom Brennan, said fighting it would cost more than settling, and you are clearly in the right anyway. Over the next week, things moved quickly. The new HOA board formally apologized to me in writing and dismissed all fines. They also voted to amend the covenants to specifically allow emergency services vehicles and equipment, with clear language that volunteers could store necessary gear. Jennifer negotiated a settlement where the HOA paid my legal fees and made a donation to the search and rescue unit. It was not a huge amount, but it was the principle that mattered. But Brenda was not done yet. On November 18th, I got a call from Deputy Harris again. "Mr. Mitchell, I need to talk to you about the complaint Miss Morrison filed about the assault." My stomach dropped. That was a false report. "I have dashcam footage if you need it." I figured it was something like that. "Look, I reviewed her complaint and compared it to the timeline and your statement. There are significant inconsistencies. I am recommending to the prosecutor that she be charged with filing a false report. I wanted to give you a heads up. She is really going to be charged. Looks that way. Filing a false report is a misdemeanor in Montana, but it is taken seriously, especially when it is done to harass someone. The prosecutor saw your lawsuit and the pattern of behavior. He is not happy." 2 weeks later, Brenda Morrison was formally charged with filing a false police report. The local paper picked up the story, running a piece about HOA overreach and abuse of power. Brenda tried to defend herself, claiming she was being targeted for standing up for community standards, but most people saw through it. The case went to court in January. I had to testify, explaining the whole situation from the beginning. My dashcam footage clearly showed I had backed out slowly and safely, and Brenda had been nowhere near danger. Several neighbors testified about her pattern of harassment, not just toward me but toward others over the years. The judge was not sympathetic. He found Brenda guilty and sentenced her to a $500 fine, 40 hours of community service, and 2 years of probation. He also issued a restraining order preventing her from contacting me or coming onto my property. In his ruling, he said something that stuck with me. HOAs serve an important function in maintaining communities, but that power must be exercised with fairness and common sense. When individuals use that power to harass and intimidate others, they undermine the very communities they claim to protect. Miss Morrison forgot that her role was to serve her neighbors, not control them. After the trial, life slowly returned to normal. The new HOA board was reasonable and fair. They focused on actual community issues like maintaining the park, organizing neighborhood events, and ensuring common areas were well kept. They stopped micromanaging people's lives. I continued my work with fish, wildlife, and parks, and my volunteer work with search and rescue. My snowmobile sat in storage until winter fully arrived, and when I needed it for rescues, I loaded it up without looking over my shoulder. Brenda moved out of Pine Ridge 3 months later. I heard through Robert that she sold her house and moved to Billings. I felt a little bad for whoever her new neighbors would be, but mostly I just felt relieved. One Saturday in late February, I was loading up for a training exercise when Tom Brennan, the new HOA president, walked over. "Hey Logan, got a minute?" he asked. "Sure, what is up?" "The board has been talking, and we want to do something to recognize the volunteer work you do. We are thinking about adding a section to our newsletter highlighting residents who contribute to the community in meaningful ways. Would you be okay with us featuring search and rescue?" I was surprised. "Yeah, that would be great. Good. We are also working on getting a county emergency equipment exemption formally added to our master deed so no future board can pull what Brenda did. I appreciate that, really." Tom looked at the snowmobile. "Can I ask you something? That night when Brenda tried to stop you, the missing hiker, did you really save his life?" "The whole team did. But yeah, he would not have made it if we had been much later. And Brenda was more worried about rules than about someone dying. Seems that way." Tom shook his head. "I never understood how people get like that, losing perspective on what actually matters. After he left, I thought about that. Brenda had been so focused on control, on rules, on maintaining her vision of what the neighborhood should be, that she had completely lost sight of why any of it mattered. Communities were not about enforcing conformity. They were about people taking care of each other, supporting each other, and making space for everyone to live their lives. I finished loading the snowmobile and headed up to the training facility. The sun was bright on the snow, and the mountains were sharp against the blue sky. This was what I loved about Montana: the wildness, the space, the way nature demanded respect and attention. That afternoon, we practiced winter survival skills and rescue techniques. Halfway through, we got a real call. A snowboarder had gone out of bounds at Whitefish Mountain Resort and had not returned. His friends were worried. We mobilized quickly. My snowmobile performed perfectly, cutting through the deep powder, navigating the terrain. We found the snowboarder after 40 minutes of searching. He had gotten turned around and was exhausted, but otherwise okay. We got him back to the resort where his friends were waiting. His girlfriend hugged me, crying with relief. "Thank you so much, thank you." "Just doing what I do," I said. Driving home that evening, I thought about how close I had come to giving up, to just moving somewhere else to avoid the hassle with Brenda. But I had stood my ground, fought back, and it had worked out. Not just for me, but for the whole neighborhood. The lawsuit settlement money that went to the SAR unit helped buy new cold weather gear and some updated equipment. In a weird way, Brenda's harassment had ended up benefiting the whole community she claimed to care about so much. March brought warmer weather and the start of spring. I spent more time on wildlife work, tracking grizzly bears emerging from hibernation, doing population surveys, and working with ranchers on conflict prevention. The snowmobile went back into storage until next winter. One afternoon, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Patricia, the board member who had been sympathetic during my hearing. "Logan, how are you?" she asked. "Doing well. How about you?" "Much better now that the board is functional again." "You know, I wanted to apologize for not standing up to Brenda sooner. I should have said something. You were in a tough position." "That is kind of you to say, but I was a coward. Watching you fight back gave a lot of us courage to do the same, so thank you. Just glad it worked out." She smiled. Me too. And I have to tell you, my grandson is studying environmental science in college. He heard about your work and wants to talk to you about careers in wildlife biology. Would you have time to chat with him? Absolutely. Have him call me. That conversation led to a mentorship relationship with Patricia's grandson, Jake, who ended up doing an internship with fish, wildlife, and parks the following summer. He was smart and passionate, exactly the kind of person the field needed. In June, the Search and Rescue Unit held a recognition ceremony. 3 of us received commendations for the rescue that night when Brenda had tried to stop me. The hiker we had saved, a man named Richard Torres, was there with his family. He shook my hand and thanked me again. I understand you had some trouble that night getting out to search, he said. A little. Nothing that mattered in the end. Well, I am grateful you did not let it stop you. His wife hugged me. Their grandkids took pictures with the snowmobile. It was a good day. Life in Pine Ridge continued peacefully. The new HOA board was efficient and unobtrusive. They sent out a quarterly newsletter, maintained the common areas, and left everyone alone otherwise. Property values stayed stable. The neighborhood was quiet and pleasant. I realized that was what a good HOA was supposed to do. Provide structure without strangling people, maintain standards without becoming tyrannical, and remember that rules served people, not the other way around. Robert became my good friend. We grabbed beers sometimes and talked about everything from local politics to fishing. He told me more stories about Brenda's reign of terror, and I was amazed I had gotten off relatively easy compared to some people. You did us all a favor by standing up to her, he said one evening. I think she would have just kept getting worse until she drove everyone out who did not fit her perfect vision. I almost moved. I am glad you did not. You are a good neighbor, Logan, and what you do with search and rescue matters. It was insane that she could not see that. By the time summer rolled into fall again, the whole situation with Brenda felt like a distant memory. I had my routine back. Work during the week, SAR training on weekends, occasional callouts for rescues. My house was my sanctuary, not a source of stress. October came around again, exactly a year since Brenda had first confronted me about my snowmobile. The weather turned cold early and snow arrived in the high country. I prepped my gear, serviced the snowmobile, and got ready for winter season. This time, when I loaded the sled onto my trailer for the first training run, no one bothered me. A few neighbors waved as they drove past. One guy stopped to ask about search and rescue and said his daughter was interested in volunteering when she turned 18. I drove up to the training facility with a sense of peace. Life was good. The work was meaningful. The community was healthy. And I had learned an important lesson about standing up for what was right, even when it was difficult. That winter, we had a busy rescue season. Several lost hikers, a few avalanche calls, and one dramatic rescue where an ice climber had fallen and was stranded on a cliff face. Every time, my snowmobile was essential for accessing remote terrain quickly. I thought about Brenda sometimes, wondering if she had learned anything from what happened. Probably not. People like that rarely did. They were so convinced of their own righteousness that admitting fault was impossible. But I also thought about all the people in Pine Ridge who had stood up with me. Robert collecting signatures, Patricia speaking up at meetings, the new board members who ran for office specifically to fix the problems, Tom Brennan working to reform the covenants. That was the real story, not one woman's power trip, but a community coming together to correct course when things went wrong. That was what neighborhoods were supposed to do. In March, I got a letter from the Montana Search and Rescue Association. I had been selected as Volunteer of the Year for Region 1. The award ceremony was in Missoula, and several of my SAR teammates came down to celebrate. Marcus gave a speech about dedication and service. He talked about the night I had been delayed getting to the rescue because of HOA issues, and how I had still shown up ready to work. "That is what real commitment looks like," he said. "Logan does not do this for recognition or glory. He does it because people need help, and he has the skills and equipment to provide it." His community tried to stop him, and he fought back not just for himself, but for his ability to continue serving others. That is the kind of volunteer we need. The award was a plaque and a handshake, nothing fancy. But it meant something. It was validation that the work mattered, that standing up to Brenda had been worth it. By the time spring arrived again, 2 full years since the whole mess started, I had fully moved on. The Pine Ridge HOA was functioning well under reasonable leadership. I had learned to document everything and know my rights, and I had a network of friends and neighbors who had my back. My career with fish, wildlife, and parks was thriving. I got promoted to senior wildlife biologist, which came with more responsibility, but also more resources to do the work I loved. Search and rescue remained a central part of my life, and I even started teaching some training courses for new volunteers. One Saturday in May, I was working in my yard when a young couple walked up. They were looking at houses in the neighborhood and wanted to ask about living in Pine Ridge. "How is the HOA?" the woman asked. "We have heard horror stories about some associations." I thought about how to answer that. "It is good now. We had some problems a couple years ago with overreach, but the community dealt with it. New board is reasonable and fair. They focus on the important stuff and leave people alone otherwise. That is good to hear." We looked at another neighborhood where the HOA president tried to dictate what color flowers people could plant. It was crazy. I laughed. "Yeah, we had someone like that, but she is gone now. If you move here, you will be fine. Just make sure to vote in board elections and stay involved enough to know what is happening." Good HOAs work when people participate. They thanked me and moved on. I went back to planting some native wildflowers in my front yard, smiling at the irony. 2 years ago, Brenda probably would have cited me for non-approved plantings. Now I could do what I wanted within reason. That evening I got a call for a rescue, a hiker with a medical emergency near Logan Pass. I loaded up quickly and efficiently, my process refined from years of practice. The snowmobile trailer backed out of my driveway without incident. No one tried to stop me. No angry HOA president appeared with citations. The rescue went smoothly. The hiker had suffered a diabetic emergency but was stable by the time we got there. We transported him down to the ambulance, and he was taken to the hospital in good condition. Driving home under the stars, I reflected on how much had changed. The fear and stress of dealing with Brenda's harassment had been replaced with confidence and peace. I knew my rights. I had support from my community, and I was able to do the work that mattered without artificial obstacles. That was all I had ever wanted, to live my life, do my job, and help people when they needed it. It seemed like such a simple, reasonable desire. But Brenda had turned it into a battle because she could not see past her need for control. In the end, though, the system had worked. Not quickly or easily, but it had worked. The community had corrected course. Justice had been served, at least in a small way, and life had moved forward. I pulled into my driveway and unloaded my gear, the familiar routine comforting in its normalcy. My house was dark and quiet, exactly how I liked it. Tomorrow I would take the snowmobile to storage for the season. In a few months, the cycle would start again. But this time, I would not be looking over my shoulder. I would not be documenting every move to protect myself from harassment. I would just be doing my job and living my life the way it should have been all along. That was the real victory, not defeating Brenda specifically, but reclaiming the peace and normalcy that should have been mine from the beginning. The freedom to be a good neighbor, a dedicated volunteer, and a wildlife biologist without someone trying to control every aspect of my existence. As I locked my truck and headed inside, I made a mental note to thank Robert and Patricia and Tom and all the others who had stood with me. Community was not just about rules and regulations. It was about people supporting each other, standing up for what was right, and making sure everyone had space to live their lives with dignity and purpose. Brenda had forgotten that, or maybe she had never understood it in the first place. But the rest of us remembered, and that made all the difference.